Thank you everyone for coming to Paint with Heart Studios here in New Hampshire, but y'all are online, so you're in your hometowns. And I'm Cindy Harrison, your host of Paint with Heart, and I'm going to be showing you how to paint this beautiful base fiddle and these pansies today. And before I do that, I want to introduce to you my bestie from the satellite office in LA. Here is Melissa Reyes.
Hi everybody, yes, I'm Melissa Reyes, and today I'm dreaming about being on the in England or in Paris, someplace really being in far off places, because I'm listening to my heart. And the word of the week is listen. And it's important to know that we can always listen to what's calling us in our hearts. And so one thing that I always do is listen to my best friend, and that's Cindy Harrison. And so we're going to be listening to something that's really close and near and dear to her heart, which is a memory of her dad and how he played the bass fiddle. Tell us about that, Cindy.
Fiddle, yes, the bass fiddle. I can remember very young, 3 years old, being in the new house, and my whole family is relatively musical. And so they would always have music playing and singing and everything. But my dad with the big bass fiddle, which was, at that point, 3 times me? You know what I mean? I was like, oh. And, but yeah, so he used to play the bass fiddle, guitar, and several other instruments. But yeah, my mom would talk about having to lug that instrument around in the car. So, but I fell in love with it. It's a very beautiful instrument. I love deep tones. So that's what inspired me. So
we're gonna paint a bass fiddle, and let's get started.
Okay, we shall do that. What we did on the background is if I used a light wood. So if you don't have a light wood, you're probably going to want to base coat the wood with a light value, be it a warm white or a light buttermilk or something, but you'll want to base coat your wood with a light value as well as seal it at the same time. I always use the DecoArt multi-purpose sealer. And once that's on there and it raises the wood grain, you go and sand it smooth. Then I added, once it's dry, I would put a decoupage over it. And this is matte, but they also have a paper formula you can use. Put that on. I try to cut my line drawing here, my music, within a 1/4 inch. So pretty much the outside of the wood. I cut it to fit that, and then I put it on and I smoothed it out. If you don't have any decoupage on top, you can roll it out and let that dry overnight or within a few hours. Then go ahead and put a coat of decoupage over top of it and let that dry. Now, it will create some bubbly and some wrinkly stuff, but most of them do subside after they've dried. So, and the ones that remain, hey, it's just, it's just character. This one, you can see there are lines where it picked up darker tones in here, and it's because this was done piecemeal. You can do that too. So basically what that means is I took my sheet music and I started tearing it and placing it down and decoupaging one layer at a time, one piece at a time. So when I did that, it makes those ridges and it catches the paint, and that gives you some nice character as well. So there's your 2 ways of doing it. You can either print it out like I did the first time for you guys, or you can tear it up and put it on in whatever makeup you want. Once that's done, trace on your line drawing, and I stayed out of the elements and I base coated around it with wash of light buttermilk, and to tone down the black and white, to tone down the black. Now we're ready to go ahead and paint our bass fiddle. I'll do that first and get that out of the way. I don't know, somehow I feel like it's more intimidating. I'm going to take out Moon Yellow, and with your flat brush, probably a size 12, probably a size 12 flat brush. Wake it up in the water and take out most of the water, because when you're we're not going to base coat it with a solid coat of color. We're going to put a wash over it, but I want it to be a heavy wash, so more paint than water. So when I start doing this, I want to see the music come through, but not 100%. Go around the black area when you do this. You might have to use a smaller brush as you get to smaller, tighter areas. You want to stay out of there. If you get too heavy, don't worry, just go over it with water and it will soften it up. If you put the decoupage over top, that acts as a sealer, seals your paper, so that any time you might go over the line, you can easily correct it. Go around the flowers. And how we do this bass fiddle, you can take that knowledge with you and you can actually do violins, cellos, any of those string instruments that are done with these colors. What we're going to do now is the side part here. It's just, it's the top bow, the waistline, and then the hip. Make sense? And we're going to do that with True Ochre. Sometimes the 12 fits, but I made that a little narrow. So I'm going to go down to my, I'm going to pick an 8 flat. A little bit of water, but not too much. Bring it right up to the Moon Yellow. This is the lid that I did. So that's the lid, and it's done with a dirty pour and a heat gun. And the directions for that and the bow will be in they are in the book. So 13 ornaments, plus you get the password to enter the Ornament Collection Club online for the viewing of the videos. It's like if you're just the public, you didn't come to any of the classes, you didn't order any of the kits or the book, you only get to see 6 ornaments. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
If your lines are not straight and you don't want them to show through your dirty whatever washes, you can take your eraser and lighten them up or get rid of them, as long as you have an idea where they go. Okay, while that's drying, I'm going to take out some graphite, and that is going to be the whole neck. Now there's a piece of wood that comes up from behind here to support it, but that's that whole fret area. This bottom part and the S's. think if you wanted to save yourself a step from having to trace this on, you can run the sheet music paper through the copy machine and put the line drawing on top of the copy machine and run the sheet music through so the line drawing comes out on the sheet music before you decoupage it. It just means you can't erase any lines, that's all. Raw sienna, going to be that piece behind the frets that's supporting the neck of the instrument. Is it starting to look like something?
It looks like something to me.
Next, I'm going to start working the, these are values, okay? So they're values of yellow. You go from light to medium to dark, and then you can go to very dark, which is just, it's a brown, but it can go in that family. You see how that kind of goes in that family. So since we base coated the front of our instrument with the light value, we're going to start shading it first with this value. Then we can create more depth by adding more values. The side of the fiddle, we started with this value, the middle value, true ochre. So what we're going to do is then start shading it with the raw sienna and then the espresso. You follow me? So we're just starting from wherever we base coat it and going down the line. To highlight, you go up the line. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So I'm going to start to do the front of the fiddle. And I found that the yellow was a nice base, but I didn't want it that bright. I did keep the brightness kind of around where the strings land on that bar, but the rest of it I really toned down. So with that true ochre and your 12 flat and some water, pick up that true ochre and start to, this is more water now, and I'm going to wash over that, fading away around the area that I want to keep bright. Keep the black black. And as you can tell, because I underpainted it with the moon yellow, it doesn't look anything like the side. Try to stay out of the flowers. More water than paint. As you go around the graphite parts. And it kind of, you just, whatever is left on your brush, the last part you're going to touch is in here. With that washed down with the true ochre, you can go back in with the moon yellow and put that bar in. I mean, I suppose you could have done it before as long as you allowed yourself to see the lines, the outline through it. For the side piece, I'm not going to do a full wash of the next value, which would be raw sienna. I am going to just do it in the area. More water than paint. Just kind of darken that hip area. Bring it down. You can also bring it up. if you want to leave a lighter area in the middle, I'm just going to add a little water to my brush and wash some of that off. Water will soften it and not leave that makeup lines, I hope. So on the front, we went from Moon Yellow to True Ochre. Now we're going to go to Raw Sienna. And on this, I'm going to be more selective. We're going to do, for beginners, a pre-wet technique. If you're intermediate to advanced and you know how to execute a side load, then go for that. Whatever is your comfort zone and makes you be able, or gives you the result of a nice soft gradation of color. So pre-wet, let's start up in this corner here. Pre-wet that area. Pick up on the corner of the brush. You can see on the corner of the brush, and I'm going to move this over so you can see. On the corner of the brush, while it's wet, work that up into that area. I started on the side, worked it into the corner, and then worked it back down and softened it around so it makes like a pie wedge. I'll show you up close. See how it looks like a pie wedge? So that's what you want to do. The next area I'm going to do is this V here. With that, and it goes around the hip and comes down to the bottom to the flowers. So you don't want puddles of water, but you do want it to move. I'm going to start with my brush parallel to the line and coax that color down. Walk it away around the hip. Now this might not be thick enough. I might not have wide enough. I might not have picked up enough paint on the brush, so I can pick up a little bit more. Walk it down, walk it around. Pat, pull, that's what I do. And down around those flowers. You don't want to work so hard. You pick out your 3/4 inch wash brush and use that. I'm going to go around the flowers here. If you have a mop brush, take that out and start softening the paint. I'm going to go down the right side of the bottom piece into that corner, walk that out a little bit. We're also going to do the corners here and here. If this is dry, go back in and pre-wet that and bring some of that color up from the bottom here around the flower and up the the left side and around the top. This color is going to go quite wide when all is said and done, and it might even be a little bit of a light wash over some of the areas. We got lots of layers here. I try not to, but you know, it just happens. Sometimes I get so excited when a piece starts showing how beautiful it's coming, and it just happens. I'm going to go around that S with some of this lights, raw sienna, sorry. I'm going to go up and down both sides of the top neck part. Let's let that rest a little bit and work on the side area. As we said, that was base coated with true ochre. We did do a little bit of a wash of raw sienna here, but let's start shading the top and bottom, the chest and hip of the base fiddle. I'm going to go up to my 3/4 inch wash because I want to make it as wide as possible the first time so I don't have to keep playing with it. And so pre-wet across the top, pick up on a side load, that raw sienna. Make sure it goes about halfway across the brush. You want it halfway across the brush. And I'm going to start with the paint down, water up, pat, pull till you reach the other side. You can pre-wet the bottom area, and you probably will have to go with a smaller brush, even though I don't really want to. Let's try it with this. If you have the decoupage on here, we're going to paint that anyways, but it will help it from absorbing the paint. And right across there. I didn't decoupage mine, I don't think. So I'm having a little bit of issue, but that's okay. I'm going to also paint up, water down for this area, paint up, water down for this area. So if it's dry and you want to go back and pre-wet and make these wider, I'm going to go in and make the front here a little darker with some more raw sienna before I go to the next color. I'm going to blow dry mine. Now there's an area here that is what we call a back to back because the paint part of the brush is touching itself here in the middle, and it fades up and it fades down. Two ways of doing that. You can do it by loading half the brush with the paint, putting that paint here, flipping the brush over and putting that paint right against the paint line you just created. Another way of doing it is tipping. So you make your brush, so the brush is flat, right? You push on the center of the brush and you just tip the center hairs in the paint. So if I go like that and I tip the center hairs in the paint, you see how it's on the center hairs? And then work it on your palette a little bit. And when you come over to that area, it'll be a line across the middle of paint, but it'll fade to the left, to up and fade down. So you can do either way, works for you. If you're going to do the back-to-back, pre-wet. Make sure you have some true ochre showing on either side. Mop that out. I'm going to let that set up a little bit more. This should be dry in here. So let's break out into our espresso. I'm going to size down to my 12 flat, pre-wet that area. We're just side load and put that paint up, water down right across that area, walk it down a little bit. I'm going to repeat that on the bottom. And walk it up a little bit. Paint down, water up on the bottom. Paint up, water down on the top. With this espresso, I'm going to add a little bit of a side load to the top area against the neck, and turn my brush over. In that piece that we did with the raw sienna, do some of this espresso just across the bottom. I'll add some to the corner here, slide it down, and end it before you get too far across the waistline. Although it kind of looks like it goes all the way across around the waistline. So you need to pre-wet, espresso around the waistline and down to the flower. I'm going to go, I noticed I didn't put my flowers as close on my original. Is closer, the flower is close to that black area, and here I left some wood showing. So I'm going to just put some espresso in there and deepen that area a little bit. Pick up on the side, walk it up a little bit, and then bring it around all the way up to the waistline. You see how building value is starting to build the depth to the painting and the richness of the wood grain, which is, there's no grain that we're painting because that would take even more time, but it's just always a rich wood. How they make those instruments, very rich. As it's starting to formulate here, I'm going to add a little bit more espresso to some areas. Let's see. More water, less espresso, but we can go down the side of the neck. And then with the water end of your brush, kind of wipe off any tail that you might create, because we're not going across the bottom of the neck. So I get down there and lift my brush off and like that. And I'm going to go down. I'll go around the whole thing lightly on the bottom. Let's deepen this area first with the raw sienna, and I'm going to use my round brush because it's narrow, but it's going to be totally loaded, more water than paint. Bring that whole thing into the dark. While that's drying, the top part should be dry, so we can now do the next color, which will be the espresso up here. Now, if you go put that on and you covered all of your raw sienna, it means your raw sienna wasn't wide enough. And I'm thinking right now that my raw sienna is not wide enough. So I might just go ahead, knowing that, and walk it up a little bit more. Turn my brush over, walk it down a little bit more so that when I go do the espresso, I will be safe and know that I got that color wide enough. Let's go over here and walk more espresso over here. In here, if this is dry now, I'm going to go to my 12 flat and I'm going to put some espresso against these flowers. Tuck that down. And also at the top underneath that neck support piece. Here. Now we're gonna glaze some color on top of this. And after we do that, you can evaluate your piece to see if you want more lights brought back in, or you need more darks in certain areas. But let's do the glazing first and then we'll go from there. The glazing is going to be done with heritage brick. This red that you see here, that is all heritage, straight heritage brick. Some heritage brick, and I'm actually just gonna have it on my brush, my whole brush, just a little bit. And then I'm gonna go across the top, walk it away, bring it around that side a little bit. And I didn't put any in the hips, in the waistline. It's just the hip, the chest, and the front left side. If you pre-wet it enough, you don't have to worry about makeup lines. Let's put a little bit of water on this side and on the corner of my brush. Dilute it, make sure it's really thin, and then you can touch a little bit down there. And mop it out or tap it out with your finger, whatever works. But there we go. The straight heritage brick is washed. It's washed over this area. It's a glaze kind of thing. It glazes down. It glazes over the hip and glazes in this area. And then I added a little glaze here. And this is just heritage brick. Actually, it's a mix. Heritage brick plus espresso plus, we introduced bittersweet chocolate. So it's one, start with, just the baby fingernail size, 1 dot of heritage brick, half of a dot of espresso to a touch of bittersweet chocolate. You will need the mix to wash over the support of the neck. Now that we have the bittersweet out, we can go and deepen this a little further even. And again, if you need to pre-wet, I'm gonna do the waistline. And if you need to size down on your brush, you can go from a 12 to a 10 or an 8, because you really only want, a very narrow gradation of color. Using this very gently, very lightly. Bittersweet is a very dark color. I don't want it to take over my piece. I'm going to do this corner thing. I pull it up, I turn my brush over, and I pull it down. And I only go the distance of half the width of my brush. I'm going to put some down here. some down here. Pie wedge where there's a V. I might even put a little bit of that color on the bottom of the neck area. For right now, the last place I'm going to put it is in the middle of my back-to-back area here. Pre-wet, don't forget, back-to-back, you should pre-wet. It'll help you to have the paint, help the paint to gradate out. So I think this one's going to be a little lighter in color, but we can wash over it and darken it as we desire. I'm going to move on to the black or graphite areas, and I'm going to take my lamp black and start shading some of those areas. Okay, I got the black out, and now I'm going to start doing work on the neck, the S strokes, and this part down here, which someday if I was so inclined, I'd find out what the parts of the instrument is. Anyway, I'm going to take my liner. There's a depth to, there's the arm or the neck, but there's also depth to the neck, the thickness. And that's what that line is right here, is the thickness. So if you want to take your liner brush and some of that black, watered down, mind you, and just come up with that thickness. And also there's thickness under here. If it gets too wide, take your flat brush and just wash it back a little bit. There's a bar that goes across the top up here. I'm going to do a little bit of that. There's a thickness on this bottom one, same thing. If you have a fine liner brush, I've got a 10-aught here. I'm going to take a little bit of moisture in my brush and make a little inky puddle of this black. And then I'm going to outline just the right side of the S stroke, the bottom, and then right side. Make sure you get most of that water out. If you have a little curl here, right side. Can you see that? Stay the same here. If this is dry, I'm going to take my 12 flat and wipe it through that puddle a little bit and go down about 1/4 of an inch. And then you can kind of wash that color down till it fades away. Mop it out. I left about 1/4 of an inch. Light. Too dark, but that's okay. There we go. Let's go and work on that area. I kind of is intimidating. What I did was I cut the bottom right across, and then I went from across there and I scrolled it up. See that line I just made going up? This line, if you start here at the end of this fret and you bring it up and you start mimicking the curvature of the right side, bring it up and then down under that curl you just made, right around to the bottom. You see how I did that? My line drawing might have been a little bit off, but that's about what it is. And then this key, and again, I haven't looked at it close up, but I just pretended to put them right here. And we don't even see the other side. We don't see the other two. Knowing that, now we get to do some shading. I'm going to take a little bit of the black, make sure more water, less paint. Always walk it out. Back up. And I'm going to put the paint down, and I'm going to go across the bottom of that front scroll. Always start with less paint, more water. You can always darken it, but it's going to be harder to lighten it up. I can do a little bit above that bar. And then I'm going to probably take my, go across the top. I'm tipping it, which is typically I tell you don't do that, but I am. So we have a side load on the top, side load on the bottom. Now I'm going to take my round brush and I'm going to wash down the left side. More water, less paint. And I'm going to go around the keys this time. Let's tuck a little bit in this circle here. If you do, mop it out or use your finger. So it starts having dimension. Next thing I'm going to do is pick up, I believe it's warm white. And with a little bit of that on my brush, if we pre-wet that area, if it's dry, the area that's in the center of the scroll and then the top of the neck. So I'm going to take the center of the scroll and I'm going to put some across like a back to back, and then with my clean brush soften the edges. And over here, Really, this is like a side load, but I'm going to use my round brush. Bring that down, soften it with the clean brush. We can add a little bit of that to the key, the top of the key. If it doesn't show up, it's probably because it's got too much water. And then we can also add it to some of the line goes across up here, some of the neck. This is a hit or miss. It's not, we're not looking to create it very lightly. And you can do the same inside the S strokes on the right. I mean, sorry, on the left. Don't do too much over there. Put a little bit over here. Lastly, on this, we take our liner brush and we outline the scroll. Just the left side. I'm going to outline the bottom of the keys. And I'm going to go down the left side. Between the thickness and the top of the fret, the neck. Goes a long way. And don't forget the thickness. And you can do the bottom of that thickness as well, where it separates the from the wood. Underneath that. If you need to add, and this is one of those things, if your background, if your element is not showing up on your background, and an outline would help it to show up better, by all means, put that outline so that it pops off the surface. So the fiddle bar was moon yellow first, and then I was silly and went ahead and put some gold, 24 karat gold extreme sheen on it. Whatever gold you have, by all means, use what you have. And I'm going with my round brush, just paint that gold. And then when that's dry, I'm going to use, I highlighted it with warm white and I shaded it with bittersweet chocolate. and did a wash of the bittersweet chocolate over the top section. So if you have your round brush, some water in it, some bittersweet in it. If you have too much water, tap it on the paper towel. And the top section of it is a wash. Tap that out. There's 3 sections of it. Hard to see, but you see how I got 3 sections here? Like a tower. So what we're gonna do is we're going to take our, you can take your 12 flat. If you want to pre-wet that, pre-wet it. Pick up a little bit of the bittersweet on a corner of the brush, and with the paint side to the right and the water side on the left, start at the outer edge, the furthest edge to the right, put a little dash of a side load, about a third of the way down another one, and a third of the way down another one. If you want to do one on the front right side, you can do that too. Dry that. And with the warm white, we're going to do that adjacent to the color you just put. So paints on the left this time, water on the right. Start on the inside against the wood next to the bittersweet on each layer. This one you can actually kind of go drag it across a little bit. While that's drying, go back to your fine liner, and we're going to outline our piece with bittersweet chocolate. So watered down, just follow the outline of your wood about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch on the inside of that outline. Gives it a little bit more detail. Lastly, on this fiddle is the strings, and that's a bit tricky. So what I did with that was make a marking. So if you can't see the markings you did with the graphite, and do four strings that are following parallel with the side lines. Okay. The next 4 strings you're going to do are going to be parallel to these lines here. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 into that wood parallel with those side lines. These 4 strings here are parallel to those side lines, and they're hard to see. Now what you get to do is take your little ruler, and I just had one, here it is. Match these dots lines to those dots, and then those dots to those lines. So it's not a straight up thing. It bows up and over. It's let's see if I can do this on paper. Maybe not. But this is my model. they come up because this piece here is thicker than the arm and the base of it. So the strings go up to a support, and then they go back like this. Make sense? So I'm going to gently draw my line. And then draw it this way. Now follow that all the way up because they have to kind of disappear up here. So you're following it from this dot to there to disappear. It's that one. That's okay. Okie dokie. And because they can be black, they can be white, they can have dark brown underneath them so they show up. Whatever it takes for it to show up, but you don't want it to show up too much up at the top because I didn't connect it to the keys, and I don't think anyone's gonna hold it against me. I'm gonna start with a warm white, water it down. I'll start with it going into this base. Okay, so now to make them show up or not show up, you can wash over the neck with the graphite or a light black, and it will settle those down so it doesn't make them show up, pop up like sore thumbs. Or you can take some of your bittersweet chocolate, and you can go underneath and outline the bottoms of them over here. So they show up against the wood a little bit better. Down here. In this area, I'm going to go a little bit more of the some black and darken that area a little bit more. And then I'm going to put actually espresso over the strings, watered down espresso, where they go into the base. Let's see. Like I said, on the top, I can take my, well, I can take the 8 and a little bit of the black. Not a lot. I really, maybe I'll mix it with the white. I really want it to more graphite. And let's just wash over that a little bit. So they kind of disappear. And then now if you want to sharpen your edge here, after we do the background, you can determine whether or not you need that little like a bullnose joint. I don't know, what is it called? Where the two wood meets together, there could be a piping like around a pillow, that piping on your I did some piping around like an outline. And it could be true ochre, it could be a little moon yellow into a little bit of espresso, wherever I needed to pop some color. But that can be, you can evaluate that after the fact when you are done with the background. So we are going to base our petals, probably using an 8 flat with the warm white. I just want to do this quickly. Do the leaves, they're light avocado. Did that. Pansies, first color. Moon yellow on the front petal in the V. So that is that area there. You can see that area there. So take out some fresh moon yellow, and I'm going to use my number 12 flat. And if you find the petal that's the top one, the front one that's in front of all the others, and if you can see your V after you pre-wet, I'm going to stick the paint part of the brush right in the V first, and then I'm going to do that pizza wedge thing.
Cool.
So I'm just going to keep walking that pizza wedge out about 1/3 of the way, and then hit it with the mop. Hard to see on here, I know, but okay. So I'm going to go back to my first flower, take a smaller load of the true ochre and put it about, I would put it about half of the moon yellow. Moon yellow first, and it's about 1/3 of the way up. You know, if you did the distance, it's about 1/3.
Right. Okay.
And then with the true ochre, I came back in and I did it about halfway of what the moon yellow is.
So you tucked it in.
Yeah, tucked it in half. So whatever the width of the moon yellow, true ochre is half of that.
Okay.
Now we have 2 colors of purple and a Payne's gray and a red violet. So those you can have in front of you. And we're going to start with purple cow. And again, I'm using my number 12 flat. The top petal, the largest petal, is going to have, and again, if you want to pre-wet, you can pre-wet, more water than paint. And I'm going to turn this around, my comfort zone here. I'm going to start from almost the yellow area and bring it around to almost the yellow area again. And I'm going to do that. And it's like I might have gone a little too low. If you want to keep some white there. Then the next one here, in the corner. Same with this one. So now we did these front ones, we have to do the ones on the left and the right of them with the purple cow. And those, when you do that, it's going to be pretty much almost the whole petal. So you come around and you're coloring in this petal. Kind of walk it down, and I'm tipping it, I know. Walk it down so that the whole petal is this color. The next color is going to be grape juice. And with that one, I did a tornado kind of effect. If you pretend that there's actually like a V in the center, I bring it down this way and I turn my brush over and bring it down that way. And it makes kind of a V. And then with the water end of your brush, you can wipe off the bottom makeup. So want to see that again? I'll show you again. Start flat with the paint part of your brush in the center of the center of the flower petal. Like you're gonna chop it in half. Turn it over, do it on this side, bring it towards the center, more pressure on the water end, and then with the water end of the brush, tap around the makeup lines you just created and mop. You can pre-wet will help, but you don't want a lot of water. See if this helps. A little bit of the grape juice on the corner of my brush. In the center, walk it away a little bit, but always going back to that center point. Flip my brush over. Start in the center, walk it toward that center line. More pressure on the water end, and then I'm going to tap that water end right in the center, tap it around the bottom piece. And it makes that V. I'm also going to do a narrow side load of this around the outside of the petal on the left and the right. Now the back petals, and there's double back petals on this one, but these have single back petals. You're going to do the application of grape juice, and that's going to come down further like a wash versus a side load. So if you wanted to take your small flat and just go ahead and wash that whole area, you could do that. Side load with red violet. This red violet is like really red. So very, very light, 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 light. If you have it and you want to put it, and go right over the top of the grape juice. Just warms it up just ever so slightly. It's only that one big petal. I'm liking these petals better, they're lighter. Let that dry for a second. Now, I'm going to take out the Payne's Gray, and that's going to be our darkest shading value of these pansy petals. One of the spots could be where these two petals meet up in the corner. You can mop it out. So we're keeping it in that really in the corner. Put one here. I'm going to put it over here against this petal. And that be. We can put one over here in this V too. So it's a very small area, not a very large area at all. I want to stick one over here. This back petal can have one in it. I went to the outer ridge of this one. Dark there. There's that petal back here if you just want to make that whole thing dark with the Payne's Gray. If you have some warm white still out, I'm going to pick up on the corner of my brush some of that warm white, and I'm going to do a half circle right above the throat of the on the yellow, about where the true ochre meets the, stops and the moon yellow starts. Right where they two, the dark and the light meet. Now I'm going to take my liner brush, a fine liner brush, and some of the Payne's Gray and dilute it so it's inky consistency, not runny. And I'm going to start, I'll outline the petal to the right of center and to the left of center, or front, I should say. And don't hesitate to wiggle, even though your lines might be smooth. You can wiggle the liner brush and make them appear more wiggly. On the front top petal, you can start in the middle and get thinner as you come away from it. Start in the middle fat and thin out when you come around the edges. with that same brush and the same paint color, Payne's Gray, diluted with some water. I'm going to pull like sun rays, if you will, out from the center, but I'm going to start from the outside of that white line, the white the side lobe we did. Some long, some short. And then from the down and the deeps on the ones on the side. They also are going to come from the ones in the back as well. So like over here, over here. Then you have to reassess, reevaluate, what am I missing? Let's go in and deepen the V a little bit with the side load of the Payne's Gray. I just want it dark on the inside, not out onto the white. So make sure that you keep it very small. If it means you need to go get a smaller brush, you should do so. For the outline on the white petals, I'm going to go pick up some grape juice mixed with water and just bring that up to the point where the two petals meet. And I added some of the true ochre lines between the Payne's Gray ones, only on that yellow part. And then on the back petals, I did lines of the red violet coming in from the outside, and I outlined the top with red violet. And if the red violet is too red violet for you, you can wash over it with some of the grape juice to tone it down if you feel the need. So I'm going to pick up some of that warm white, and the mustache is going to look like this. Lay it down, push in, pull out and up. Lay it down, push in, pull up and out. So that's kind of what you're looking at. It's comma strokes, but not perfect. That goes right in the dead center, and it goes off to the left and off to the right of each yellow V area. I'm going to do the leaves. So we did the base coat with a medium value green. I used light avocado, and you might have used Hauser medium. But I'm going to shade with plantation pine. And I'm going to use my number 12 flat, and I'm going to go against where the leaves go under the petals. If it doesn't show up enough, I can pick up a little touch of the Payne's Gray into my plantation pine and make it a deeper green and go back the highlight, when that's dry, the highlight is going to be moon yellow. It seems to show up better and it harmonizes better with our painting. The center vein of these, and that's the only detail I did, again, plantation pine. And if it doesn't show up, by all means, take the mix of Payne's Gray and mix some Payne's Gray with it. And then it will show up. And I never cut it straight in half. I always curve the veins. So remember when I said before about how there's that piping or whatever around the wood where the seam is? So if you've lost your edge between the two, the front and the side, we can go back in, and I'll take a little bit of the moon yellow, and we can kind of add some piping that can turn into darker colors. And you want it lighter than the darkest color there, but you want it to show up but not be too bright. So let's see, pick up some of that, bring it over. This is going to be a little of the true ochre. So just to separate the front from the back is what I'm doing. So when you get the pansies done, you evaluate your piece and say, you know, where do I need more darks? Where do I need more lights? I'm thinking that I could get darker in here around the back end of the fiddle. So the raw sienna isn't doing it. So I'm going to have to go to the espresso. See if that makes a difference. Yep, that's nice. This way here, it'll pop the flowers a little bit more and bring them up. This could be darker over here, and that could be even picking up some of the bittersweet. Can't hurt, just a little bit. A little bit darker. So wherever you feel you need to deepen, start light and then get darker and darker as you feel the need. To my raw sienna for over here. A lot more water. So I'm going to start with raw sienna. So raw sienna first, following that up with espresso. I'm going to use the biggest brush I have, my 3/4 inch, and have your mop handy if you feel, you know, you need to, you make makeup lines. But we're going to pre-wet an area. Now I don't want a puddle of water. I want it moist. So if you have a puddle of water, it means you lift it up and it starts running. then you need to wipe some of it off. Okay. I'm going to pick up the raw sienna, tap it, not work it out, but tap it on my surface and just start manipulating it up and down the side of my board, walking it in towards the flowers. I'm going to turn it over and do the same on this side. Pre-wet the top. Oops. Pick up some of that raw sienna. As you can see, I've got lots of lumps and bumps here. So if you have a paintbrush, left any paint marks. I'm going to dry the bottom here so I don't wipe off. Because we used a lot of water, there's not a lot of product in it that will hold it, bind it to the background, because we broke down the pigment too much with water. So if we go over it right now, we're going to wipe off what we just put on. So I have to really dry it good in order to keep it staying on. Okay, repeat. You don't want to get it on the flowers, so make sure they're wet, and then you can wipe them off easier. Tip up here. Now you can see how antique I made this one, even on with this lighting, and this one looks still white. So I need to bring this, tone this down like I did here. And that might mean I have to take my whole brush into the raw sienna. Again, fair amount of water, because we're making a wash. And I'm going to go over the whole thing. But I think that's too dark, so I'm going to pick up some water. And water that out. I have to. We can wipe some of it away with our damp paper towel, which is nice because it gives it that antique look. It's not too dark. That looks better to me. It's still not as dark as over here, but I'm liking it much better. I'm going to dry that. I'm going to go back and do that outside side load again with a heavier application of color. I'm not going to pre-wet it, because if I do, I'm going to wipe off everything I have on there, because I broke down the ability for it to adhere to the paper when I added water to when I made it into a wash. We're going to ground these guys, and by that I mean we're going to make some dark shadows underneath them so it looks like they're sitting down onto something. And I'm going to start with again with the raw sienna, around the petals and around the leaves. Let's sit under the base too here. I'm going to go around some of the areas just to give it a little bit more. Again, everybody's touch is different, so everyone's will look different. But if you feel like you lost an edge, like I've lost an edge here, then you can go in and be careful you don't wipe off what you just put on. And I'm going to go in and take side load of that raw sienna. Just kind of gently pass it around the outside
Oh, I love that.
of the fiddle. It just kind of tones it down, brings the fiddle forward. Now, to get a little bit more antique-y on this one, I'm going to pick up that espresso and start just putting it, less water, more paint. I'm going to start putting it in the corners, wrap it around the top. Not that you can see that. Let's see. Stick it over here in this corner. I think this is bittersweet. I actually put bittersweet on there instead of espresso, but it's okay. Again, see what I'm saying? It's okay. It's not going to hurt anything to have that. As long as you're using whatever's, like say for instance, we have that heritage brick in here, but we really didn't put it anywhere else. I can take that heritage brick, and I'm putting a fair amount of water in there. Whoops. I can put some of that heritage brick on a green leaf.
Oh,
I can put it over here on these petals.
oh, I love it.
I mean, can you see it pop up a little bit?
Yes.
I can even start and put it a little bit on the background over here. I mean, sometimes it's hard to see that color coming through, but I'm going to put it over here on my. So it's just here and there, but it can make a difference. It warmed up. I think it warmed it up or cooled it down, whatever. I think it warmed it up. Kind of, it warms up. I mean, I'm almost liking now this one better than that one. On the sides, what I did was I painted it. I did paint it with espresso here. And then I put the 24 karat gold on the inside of the ridge. And I think that kind of made it even more elegant looking.
Well, thanks everybody for coming for today's Paint with Heart. We had such a great time and it was so wonderful to see everybody. I really enjoyed making my bass fiddle and thinking about listening to my heart, and getting the chance to be with you really means a lot to me. So I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Cindy.
You too, and thank you all for coming. And yes, and please, any questions at any time, just holler. I'm here for you. And if I don't hear from you in a while, I might send you an email saying, hey, how you doing? Don't hesitate to say we're fine. Go away.
Never.
Okay, so thank
you.
And yes, and remember, my slogan is always remember to always paint with heart. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.